The moment the female CEO stepped into the sunlit hall, time seemed to tighten around one ordinary man's chest, because he knew some days quietly decide the rest of your life before you ever realize what is happening. That afternoon was supposed to be invisible for him. Another stretch of hours endured with lowered eyes and a borrowed suit, yet fate leaned closer, warm and daring, as if daring him to finally be seen. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet courage it takes to keep going when life has already taken so much. Then, before the story goes any further, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Touch, because stories like this only live when hearts choose to listen. Ilyas Rahmani had not always been a man who blended into the background. Once, in another lifetime that felt impossibly distant, he had been full of plans and laughter, someone who danced without thinking and dreamed without fear. That life ended on a bright morning when his wife never came home from her shift, leaving him standing in a hospital corridor under harsh daylight with a 7-year-old boy clinging to his leg, both of them learning in the same breath that love can disappear without warning. Since that day, Ilyas lived carefully, measuring every step and every hope, because raising his son Sami alone meant there was no room left for risk. He worked 2 jobs, mornings at a logistics warehouse and afternoons as a maintenance assistant in a commercial building, always returning home before sunset so Sami would never unlock an empty door. Their small apartment filled with daylight every afternoon, dust floating in the sun as they did homework together, cooked simple meals, and tried to build a sense of safety from routine alone. The charity event that changed everything took place in the same building where Ilyas spent his afternoons fixing lights and cleaning hallways. It was a daytime fundraising reception organized by a major tech firm, meant to look effortless and elegant in the natural glow of glass walls and white marble floors. For Ilyas, it meant extra work, moving chairs, wiping tables, and staying out of the way. He wore his cleanest shirt under a borrowed blazer, not to impress anyone but to remind himself that dignity did not disappear just because circumstances had narrowed. As guests arrived, sunlight poured through the tall windows, reflecting off polished surfaces and casting long, soft shadows that made the room feel like a stage prepared for something more than polite speeches and clinking glasses. Serene Kovacs arrived without noise, without spectacle, yet the entire room subtly rearranged itself around her presence. She was the CEO whose name carried weight across industries, known not only for her sharp intelligence, but for the calm authority that made people feel both challenged and safe. She had built her company from nothing after losing her parents young, learning early that survival and compassion did not have to cancel each other out. That afternoon, she stood near the windows, sunlight catching in her dark hair, listening more than she spoke, her eyes noticing the details others ignored. She noticed the staff as much as the donors, noticed the way one man moved with quiet purpose, how he paused to help an elderly guest adjust a chair, how he smiled at a child tugging at his mother's sleeve as if that small moment mattered. Ilyas noticed her too, though he tried not to. He had seen her face on screens and articles, a distant symbol of success that felt unreal compared to the weight of his own responsibilities. Still, something about the way she carried herself made it hard to look away, not because of glamour but because of a grounded warmth that reminded him of who he used to be. When the live band began to play softly, filling the bright hall with gentle rhythm, Ilyas felt an old ache stir inside him. A memory of dancing barefoot in a kitchen long ago, of laughter echoing against daylight walls. He pushed the thought aside, returning to his work, reminding himself that some chapters are closed for a reason. The event moved along smoothly, speeches delivered, donations pledged, applause rising and falling like polite waves. Yet beneath the surface, something shifted. Serene watched the room with a kind of patient curiosity, and her attention kept returning to Ilias, not out of pity, but recognition. She recognized the posture of someone who had learned to carry loss quietly, the way he kept his shoulders squared as if holding up more than his own weight. When the music changed to a brighter tune, inviting movement rather than background noise, she felt an impulse she had learned to trust over years of hard decisions. Life, she believed, rarely offered second chances wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it required a leap in full daylight, in front of witnesses. She crossed the room with calm steps, sunlight following her like a soft spotlight, and stopped in front of Ilias, who froze, unsure if he had done something wrong. In that moment he felt every difference between their worlds, every reason to step back. Yet her expression held no judgment, only an open invitation to be human again. Without raising her voice, without turning it into a spectacle, she asked him to dance with her before regret had a chance to settle in. The words landed gently but firmly, like a hand placed on his chest, reminding his heart that it was still capable of response. Ilias's first instinct was refusal, shaped by years of caution and self-denial. He thought of Sammy waiting at home, of bills, of how out of place he would look under the bright eyes of donors and executives. But something deeper than fear stirred inside him, a longing not for romance or escape, but for permission to feel alive without guilt. The band continued to play, daylight streaming through the windows, and in that suspended moment he realized that regret had already taken enough from him. With a breath that felt like crossing a threshold, he accepted, stepping onto the open space where the sunlight pooled. They moved simply, without choreography, two people responding to rhythm and presence rather than expectation. There was no dramatic flourish, only the quiet miracle of connection in plain sight. Ilias felt his body remember what his mind had tried to forget, the ease of movement, the release of tension stored for years. Serene followed his lead naturally, her confidence not overpowering but steady, creating a space where he did not feel smaller. Around them, the room softened, conversations fading into a respectful hush, as onlookers sensed that this was not entertainment, but something genuine unfolding. As they danced, Ilias felt a weight lift, not because his problems disappeared, but because for the first time in years, he allowed himself to exist beyond them. He thought of Sammy, of the example he wanted to set, not just of responsibility but of resilience. Serene, in turn, felt a quiet affirmation of her belief that leadership was not only about strategy, but about recognizing humanity wherever it appeared. In the clear light of day, surrounded by glass and sky, two lives briefly intersected in a way that neither could have planned. When the music ended, applause rose gently, not loud or intrusive, but warm. Ilias stepped back, heart racing, unsure what would come next. He expected the moment to dissolve, to be a beautiful interruption before returning to invisibility. Instead, Serene remained present, asking about his life, his work, his son, listening with an attention that made him feel seen rather than examined. She learned of his long hours, his devotion to Sammy, his quiet dreams deferred but not extinguished. He learned of her journey, her losses, her belief that success meant little if it did not make room for others. Over the following days, that brief dance echoed through Ilias's life like sunlight lingering after sunset. Serene arranged to meet him again, not as a favor but as an opportunity. She had seen his reliability, his integrity, and his ability to care beyond obligation. A position opened within her company's facilities and community outreach division, one that offered stable hours and growth. Ilias approached the chance with humility and disbelief, yet also with a growing sense that perhaps life was not finished surprising him. When he told Sammy about the possibility, the boy's eyes lit up, not with excitement about money or status, but pride in his father's courage.